I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Ellettsville Plan Commission for June 11th, 2016. Would you please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? What? 2020. Yeah, 2020, not 4 years ago. It is 2020. Dan, would you like to start us?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Denise, would you do roll call, please?
Sandra Hatch.
Here.
Terry Baker. Donna Calvert.
Here.
David Drake.
Here.
Pamela Samples.
Here.
Dan Swafford.
Here.
Pat Wicklowski.
Here.
The first thing on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting on March the 5th, 2020.
Second.
I think we were going to ask for those to be tabled that are not ready yet.
Okay. Okay, so let's change that motion, David.
I'll withdraw it. I'll withdraw second.
Do we want to make a motion to table?
Please.
So moved. Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay. Is there anyone that has a conflict of interest on the Plan Commission with either of the items that are on our agenda? Yes, Don?
Yeah, my policy for 20 years, more or less, if it involves my neighborhood, I abstain.
And your neighborhood is
The one that Deer Park runs through that was mentioned several times on directing traffic back over and coming down through Deer Park.
Spring Valley.
Yeah, Springs Valley.
name
So
of the road.
for 20 years I've done that. I
Okay.
don't want somebody to say he did that because he didn't want him in his neighborhood or he wanted him someplace else, so I just abstain on that.
Okay, thank you very much for acknowledging. We will move on to new business, the voluntary annexation of 4760 North Loudon Road, Bloomington. It is 14.67 acres, and the petitioner is Regina Burns. It's case number PC 20-06. Kevin?
Good evening and welcome back, Plan Commission members. Our first case tonight is a super voluntary annexation. Super voluntary means that it is a 100% voluntary annexation. No one is being forced in against their will. The property is a little under 15 acres in size, and the reason is the petitioner would at some point possibly like to subdivide a few parcels off for family members, and that's not readily done under Monroe County zoning ordinances. So that is the reasoning for it. It is recommended to be zoned R1 single family residential. All the legal requirements have been met, and staff does recommend a favorable recommendation to Town Council with a zoning of R1. Just to give you an idea of where it's at, highlighted in blue, it's on the east side of Loudon Road. Schools are up here, up in this area. You got Sycamore and Reeves, and it backs up to Prominence Point. And this is just close up showing where the house is currently, and most of this is open land right now. And a few shots of the property just for a little more context. That's looking out towards Loudon Road. This is the front of the house. And these two are shots out the backyard. And that is all I really have for this. I can answer any questions. The petitioner is also in attendance if you have any questions for her.
Does the Plan Commission have any questions concerning this voluntary annexation?
I got a couple.
Yeah.
I agree with the annexation. My question is, if she's going to have, or a person is going to have their family live there in different areas on the property,
Mm-hmm.
and then a road goes in naturally to, I'm assuming, to meet the houses wherever they're going to be.
Sure.
Do we take care of those roads Are we obligated, aren't we, to take care of the
No,
roads?
not necessarily. In this case, it'd probably be, I can't imagine more than a couple. Similar to what went in, and I can't remember where it was, north of Union Valley Farms. We annexed in, I think it was Ned Brown's.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And they'd split off a couple lots for their kids, and they have just a few driveways running back in there. So something similar to that. We don't.
Okay, all right, that was my only question. Thank you.
Is there any other questions? Is there any questions from the public, or would the petitioner like to speak? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion and move forward. Case PC 2020-06, the voluntary firms annexation to the town council with a favorable recommendation with a zoning of R1.
I'll second it.
Denise, would you please do roll call?
Sandra Hatch,
Yes.
David Gray,
Yes?
Pamela Samples. Yes. Dan Swafford,
Yes.
Pat Wizalowski.
Yes.
Don Calvert.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. It's pretty hard to deny a 100% voluntary annexation, so thank you very much. Okay, now we will move on to the next item on the agenda, a petition for Phase 4 of the Centennial Park subdivision, .62 acres, and waiver from subdivision regulations. The petitioner is TDML LLC, case number PC 20-07. Is this considered a public hearing on this? Were both of these considered public hearings?
They're both public hearings.
Okay.
They have been advertised as such.
Okay. Well, I would like to remind the audience that we will hear from our planner, and then the petitioner has an opportunity to speak, and there will be remarks from the audience. We'd like those remarks to be held at 3 minutes apiece, and try to avoid duplication of questions. So, Kevin?
Thank you. This request is for approval of a preliminary and final plat of a single lot subdivision. As part of this, the petitioner will be putting up either a cash bond or letter of credit for the improvements to the right-of-way that are shown on the plat. The property is zoned R1 single-family residential, and the lot does meet all minimum lot requirements. Of note, the right-of-way is proposed to be 50 feet. Our subdivision regulations do require 60 feet, so they are asking for a waiver, and I'll get to that on the next slide. The right-of-way currently for Centennial Drive north of there is 50 foot wide, and for Centennial Drive south of there is also 50 foot wide. The plat has been reviewed by all town departments, and they did have a few little items fixed. Those have all been fixed, and it is what you have in front of you is in compliance. All the legal noticing requirements have been met. As far as the waiver request, they are requesting a waiver from the subdivision regulations, which the Plan Commission does have the right to reduce. This is not considered a zoning variance since it is in the subdivision chapter. They're asking for their waiver to reduce that right-of-way from 60 feet to 50 feet for the reason that it would then match up with the rights-of-way on either side of it. Staff does recommend approval of the waiver. The board may request of the petitioner to explain how the waiver meets the criteria, which there are 4 criteria on this slide. These are listed in the subdivision regulations, similar to what we look at in a variance request, that it will not be detrimental to public safety, health, welfare, or otherwise injurious to other property, that the conditions upon which the request for a waiver is based is on the uniqueness of the property for which the waiver is sought, 3, due to the peculiar physical surroundings, shape, or topographical conditions of the specific property involved, a particular hardship to the owner would result as distinguished from mere inconvenience. Financial hardship does not constitute grounds for a waiver. And finally, it shall comply substantially with the provisions of the comprehensive plan. And I tried to hit all of those in the staff report that all the Plan Commission members received. Just a quick location, it's this area right here towards the end of the cul-de-sac, and this is Centennial Park to the north. This is the plat itself that shows current existing house and right-of-way. And just some shots of what it looked like as of last week when I put the public hearing sign out. And I think that was the end of my presentation. So at this time, I can take any questions or turn it over to the petitioner.
One question. As far as the plat is concerned, that is not necessarily a discretionary matter. If it meets the requirements of the subdivision ordinance, we have to approve the plat. Correct. Okay. So our only really issue with some discretion tonight is the waiver.
Correct.
Okay. And it does meet all of the requirements of the subdivision ordinance.
The plat, yes, it does meet the subdivision requirements, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions from the Plan Commission? Would the petitioner like to speak on behalf of the project?
Sandy, can you be sure to have everybody sign in?
Yes. If you come to the podium to speak, please sign in on the sheet so that we can get your name recorded in the minutes of our meeting.
Good evening. I'm Steve Emery. I'm here representing TDML LLC as their attorney. This is Tracy Lutz. She's a principal of that LLC. I think staff did a great job of covering this. It's a very simple single lot plat. I'll speak briefly to the waiver. It's pretty dry that the right-of-way to the north is 50, the right-of-way to the south is 50. It would be kind of a hardship to ask us to give 60. There'd be no use to have whatever that distance is, 100, 110 feet of 60-foot right-of-way. So with that, Tracy and I'll answer any questions if you have them. Otherwise, we'd like to reserve the remainder of our time if there are any matters brought up by the public.
Thank you. Is there any questions for Mr. Emery?
Or Ms. Lutz.
Ms. Lutz? Okay, so at this time, well, do you think Kevin has anything additional to add? Okay, then we are ready for comments from the public. If you would like to speak on this matter, you're welcome to come to the podium, sign in, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
My name is Mike Carmen. I've been here before to talk about this property, and we've been in court about this property, I think 3 times, and we're going to be in court again about very soon. Sandy, a couple of years ago, you were very upset that you had been provided some plat information that was wrong, that you had relied upon that. It all had to do with an access and connection to North Centennial Drive. And the tenor of your remarks at the time, because I remember very well, I took it that you were upset that somehow you thought Highland Park Estates had done something wrong and misled, and allowed you to be misled. Well, they didn't. But that's happened again tonight. You've been shown a plat, and I don't care whether you approve the plat or not. What I object to is the right-of-way label on there. There's a court injunction that says you can't do that. There'll be a hearing for contempt of court for these people doing that, for putting that on that plat. And that request for finding of contempt was filed today, and we'll have a hearing about it. But there is a court injunction right now against putting a road through there, and they know it. And to put that on the plat is misleading. You approve that plat and record it with the right-of-way designation on there. In the face of a court order says no road through there connecting to Centennial Drive. That's on you. It's not Highland Park doing that. And so I'm here just to make the record clear that if you do not rely upon that plat to create a right-of-way, there's going to have to be a court order before that's going to happen. And that order, these people asked the court already to vacate the injunction against that road, and Judge Nardi said no. And now they have that up on appeal. So they're in here tonight putting that road on that right-of-way on this plat and asking you to prove that. They're in the Court of Appeals trying to get that allowed because there's an order that says you can't do it. So keep that in mind. You can approve the plat, but I think you ought to require that right-of-way dedication to be removed from it because it's wrong.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Can I ask Darla a question?
Yes. You can come to the podium, but
Oh,
we're
go
going to
ahead.
have
I didn't know there was somebody else coming up.
Feel free to pull that down if you don't mind touching it.
Can you hear me?
Come a little closer.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Deborah Hackman, and I live next door to this property that's the plat is being deceived. We are being deceived about what's going on there. I want to just reiterate what Mr. Carmen said, that it is in the Court of Appeals right now, and in fact, there's been 2 rulings. The first one said no road. The second one, through the Court of Appeals, also said there's no ruling. I sent both of those documents to you this week, and you all, I am assuming you all have them and can look at them, and you can see that the court, Judge Nardi said no, and another, I don't remember the other judge's name, but it states very clearly that the road is not supposed to happen. Even though you may have changed and converted it from a Bloomington property to an Ellettsville property, that's not the point. The point is the judge said no.
So Darla, correct me if I'm wrong, but the court action was in regards to the right-of-way that ended up being determined to belong to Robert Kreider, not the area where we are currently making the right-of-way as part of this plat.
Okay, I guess I'm not sure. Judge Nardi's ruling stated that the road could not go through.
On the right-of-way that was originally listed on the plat that
Yes.
the judge determined did not
Yes.
exist. But we're not building, they're not building the road on that same piece of property.
Okay, you may be getting confused with what Judge Nardi said versus what Judge Hill found years ago when Gilbert Mordeau was litigating. So I guess, is that your question?
Well, it may be. I guess, so what is your legal opinion about what Mr. Carmen just said?
Okay, I think what you need to keep in mind, don't get the apples confused with the oranges. So, 2 years ago, the Plan Commission, approximately 2 years ago, August of 2018, the Plan Commission voted to vacate the covenants and restrictions with regard to Lot 15 in Highland Estates. And there was an opportunity for an appeal, and the Court of Appeals returned or reversed Judge Hill, and so that's a done deal. The covenants and restrictions with regard to Lot 15 have been vacated, so that's done. So all that's before the Plan Commission tonight is the issue as to whether or not this, what used to be Lot 15, is now going to be Lot 79 in Centennial Park. And as you pointed out, if it meets the requirements of the subdivision regulations, then I think the Plan Commission has to grant it. And you should enter findings either way. If you find it doesn't meet the subdivision regulations or the plat requirements, then you have to make findings and describe or explain why it doesn't meet the town's requirements. And the town's requirements are set forth in 153.024, some of which don't apply in this case because we're talking about one lot. But essentially it says the plat shall contain the following information: the subdivision, the scale, the boundary drawings, boundary descriptions, roads, right-of-ways, easements, permanent structures, and things of that nature. And so you have an opinion from your planning director that this proposed plat amendment, or I'm sorry, plat approval, request for a plat approval does in fact meet the town's requirements.
So I guess what I was trying to ask, rather inartfully, I guess, is that we are not violating a court order by approving this plat.
The court order does not apply to the town.
That's what I was trying to...
Yeah, okay, sorry.
Sorry.
The town is not involved in that other litigation between Centennial Park and Highland Park Estates.
Okay.
Highland Park had its opportunity to appeal the Plan Commission's ruling 2 years ago, and that's done.
Can I respond to your question?
Sure.
Be very brief. To clarify, so it's not obviously, we're not objecting to the plat. It may well meet your ordinance standards. I agree if it does, you're supposed to approve it. That's not a dispute. I object to the label of the right of way because after you vacated the plat of Lot 15, and after you vacated the covenants, that went back to court. These people asked Judge Nardi to vacate the restraining order to prohibit a road from being put through that Lot 15, which is the property before you tonight. Not the other right-of-way issue that you've been asking about. Specifically, what was Lot 15 is what is now being offered to you to replat as Lot 79 or whatever it is. The court order from Judge Nardi specifically says through that property, they are enjoined from putting a road. That still is there. They asked the court to vacate that order after you vacated the covenants. He said no. That's what they have on appeal. So the restraining order specifically that they cannot put a road or dedicate any part of this Lot 79 for public right-of-way purposes. And that is still there. It doesn't bind you. My complaint is the plat is misleading if you approve it with that designation on there, because that is not a allowed road and it will not go through there. That's all. Otherwise, I don't care what you do with the plat. It appears to meet all requirements. That's fine.
Is there any other questions from the audience? Ms. Raymer, you want to have an additional comment?
I do. I'd like to respond to Mr. Carmen's comments. Contrary to his assertions, I'm sorry. Contrary to his assertions, it's not the petitioner here who's misleading you, it's him that's misleading you. That injunction applies to Centennial Park LLC. That was the only party to that action in court, and that's the only party the injunction was directed towards. Centennial Park LLC has sold the property, arm's length transaction, to TDML LLC. It did so after you vacated the covenants and restrictions. Those covenants and restrictions no longer apply to TDML LLC. In fact, at a hearing in December of 2019, Mr. Carmen himself told Judge Nardi that if Centennial doesn't want the covenants and restrictions to apply to them, and I'm paraphrasing slightly here, then it needs to give up the title to the property. And Centennial has done that. Centennial sold the property to TDML LLC. TDML LLC is not subject to the injunction that is being talked about by Mr. Carmen, so he's misleading you in that respect. So again, we'd ask that since the plat meets the requirements of your ordinance, that you please approve it for TDML LLC to file and record. Thank you.
Jonathan Hill, and I live on North Hull Drive, which Centennial in the new development, it tees into North Hull. And so clearly there are things that the residents of this neighborhood have come to realize. Some of us were a little more keen on them when we purchased the properties back there, and we knew that this may or may not happen. I'm a designer by trade, and I work for Cook, so I'm one of their interior designers. And you look at that plot, and you look at the site plan, and you say, that's an obvious connection there. For public safety, it's an obvious connection. The North Hull, that's also an obvious connection. Both of those, for ease of access to the neighborhood, for the safety of the children that live back there, for medical care as people continue to age and the ease of access, cul-de-sacs are converted all the time. It's the nature of change, and it's the nature of continued growth. Sometimes we purchase something and it changes. And I'm in favor of the connection of Centennial merely because there is a light there that would completely take the danger of turning out onto 46 from Deer Park. That is a dangerous intersection. So if you all determine, whoever determines that Centennial shouldn't be connected there, something else has to happen. Because a whole family will get killed eventually. I've sat and waited at that intersection from Deer Park for 12 minutes to turn out. It's not safe. You can't get fire trucks back there. And this neighborhood has been approved as it was plotted, so surely these issues would be coming up. I would strongly encourage, we've got to do something for public safety.
Thank you for your comments.
So for some of the neighbors that weren't around when all this happened, we were always under the assumption that there would be a connection made at Centennial Drive and Hull Drive both. There's been a lot of lawsuits back and forth over the last several years. And I'm not going to waste our time tonight discussing the merits of having these connections because that's really not relevant to our decision tonight. But just so you know what all has come up before.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Kreider, member of Highland Park Estates. A couple things that were just said by one of the personnel, and I heard you say, David, about that you were always under the assumption that there was a connection point at Centennial Drive and Hull Drive. I'm sorry you were misled by whoever you were misled, but there was never to be a connection to Centennial Drive. It's never been drawn. I know that's been refuted. It's been in the courts, and it sounds to me like it'll continue to be there. They're going to get a connection through Hull Point. Talk about, people that bought in Centennial Park subdivision. I understand, and they're going to get a connection to Hull Drive in due time. They chose to buy back there with one connection point. Now all of a sudden you're going to try to run a road down Centennial Park or Centennial Drive that has been there since the 70s. People bought on a cul-de-sac. That's what they expected. It was never meant to be a road through there. The one comment I really took to heart where the gentleman before me spoke, that cul-de-sacs are turned into thoroughfares all the time. We're in the construction business. We work all over the state. I don't know of one other cul-de-sac, a permanent cul-de-sac that we've been involved in, that has been turned into a thoroughfare. So I guess maybe we haven't been involved where he's been, but I don't know where they're at. That's not common practice. So I guess that's what I've got to say, and we'll go from there. I guess the only other thing is, as Mike said, the easement that's, the right-of-way that's drawn on there, we're not opposed to it. They've already taken the lot from lot 15, which I disagreed with to start with, but it's gone. So now if it's going to be 79, but it is the right-of-way thing. I think you guys are setting yourself up for some other issues. So I just do what you got to do, but I want to make sure everybody's aware. Thank you.
I like that question. Mr. Carmen says that he's going back to court. Something happened today that they went to court or filed, whatever. But Mr. Emery said that it's a different party now, okay? Number one. And number two, do you suggest that we vote on this tonight with litigations going through of some sort?
Well, I'm not sure, in all honesty, waiting until the Court of Appeals decision came down, how that would help you, because the parties are not the same. And the issues, although they're similar, they're not exactly the same. The issues that are before the Court of Appeals are not the same as the issues here tonight. So, in all honesty, Pat, I don't know how that would help you if you waited 4 or 5 months for the Court of Appeals to decide.
Could I speak again?
Yes, ma'am.
Again, my name is Deborah Hackman. And you can put a lipstick on a pig, but a pig is still a pig. What happened is Mr. Moore sold that property to his daughter. So in reality, yeah, the business entity changed, but what this is so immoral. He sold it to his daughter to call it to take him out of take the property out of the legality of it. Do you see the wrongness of that? I mean, that's just wrong. It's just wrong. I'm sorry.
Do you want me to find it again? So I want to speak to that. I'm not the same as my father. It's not the same business. My husband and I entered into a lease with an option to purchase agreement with them to purchase that home early 2019, February, March. I'd have to go look at the paperwork and see when we did it. We told them we'd take over the management of that home. We put a tenant in that home and managed it for quite a while. When that tenant moved out at the end of the year, we've spent the last few months renovating the home, and we just put a new tenant in there. When we decided to spend the money to start renovating the home, we exercised our option to purchase the home. So my husband and I are the owners of this property, and my husband does a lot of our property management, handles any of our rentals, and he's been handling this. Going to have a good neighbor in there, and I sell the lots in Centennial Park and work really hard back there to help those families. I've heard over and over and over again, what do you know about the connection? I get an email probably at least every other day with people in there asking me about it, but I also get a lot of calls from grandparents that have grandkids. Their kids have moved in there with their grandkids and they want to live closer. They're just waiting to be able to move closer to their families. And if you look at affordable housing, there's just there's nothing there. These are going to be your last remaining affordable lots before you start seeing the cost of land go through the roof out here, because Ellettsville's growing so much. And so I feel like it's a very important thing for me as a realtor, working to help people find homes. And yes, financially, it's a good thing for me as well, but it's a very good thing for the people who want to live in there, and connecting this would be a really good thing for the people who do already live in there. And so I just want to make it really clear that my husband and I bought this with the intention to lease it out, the house, and because it was a good thing to see it connect for all the people in there that I've worked with that are living in there.
Thank you.
May I have one more brief comment?
Yes.
I'd like to respond to Mr. Carmen's assertion. The litigation he's talking about today is an attempt to hold Centennial Park and myself personally in contempt of court. All we've done is honor a contract we had with TDML LLC, Centennial Park, to sell them that property if they want to. Now TDML is before you asking to plat. Has nothing to do with that. I think he's again making threats that he might sue you, might sue TDML, might sue somebody. I'd urge you to ignore that litigation. That's between now myself, Centennial Park, and Highland Park LLC.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You can get three lawyers together and all three state something different. So I'm going to go with what our attorney tells us. And I think that...
Come a little closer to your mic.
I think that the issue that we are required to decide under law is fairly simple. We're approving a plat that we have to approve, and if we approve it, are going to approve a waiver that only makes sense. I mean, you wouldn't, why would you want a 60-foot strip in the middle of two 50-foot easements? So I think as complicated as all these other issues are, the issues actually before us tonight are very simple.
With that being said, I think that it's time to call for a motion.
I'd like to ask a quick question.
Yes, certainly.
On the waiver again, on the explain that to me in just a little bit more detailed. I guess I'm not following the waiver thing.
So Centennial Drive up here, from here to here is the right of way. That's 50 foot wide.
Okay.
Get out of Centennial Drive, going south from property line to property line is 50 foot wide. Our code requires 60 foot for some reason, although that's here nor there. What they're asking for is to put in a 50 foot wide right of way that'll match line to line instead of coming back 10 feet for just the length of one property and then cutting back to 50.
And ours is 60 foot wide?
Our requirement is the Centennial plat was approved 12 years ago, so it had 50 foot right of ways in it.
Okay, so I will make a motion that we approve the preliminary and final plat for PC 20-07, and that we approve the waiver request based on the findings that it is not detrimental to public safety, health, or welfare, or injurious to other property. The reason being that on both sides of this easement are already 50 feet. Also the uniqueness of the property. Same finding that there are 50 feet on either side, so why would you want 60 feet in the middle? Practical difficulty also goes with the uniqueness of the property, and it is substantially in compliance with the existing comprehensive plan. Was there anything else?
Compliance with the town code.
And in compliance with the town code.
That being said, do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second. I do have a question for Kevin, either one. Why would we grant a waiver now for a 50-foot easement when, I don't want to get ahead of anything, but if the judge says no, they can't put an easement through there, what good is that easement?
Well, I think...
I don't really know how to answer that question for you. I mean,
Why would we vote on an easement when there's litigation still going on with it?
well, I think it would still be going on whether it was a 50 or 60 foot right of way in there. I don't know that affects what litigation would go on.
The question before us is just the waiver on the street width.
Not the easement, just the street width.
so they're just saying they'd like a waiver from a 60-foot road to a 50. That's the question.
Well, the right-of-way, the
The
road
right-of-way.
itself is like 26, I think it's
Okay,
26
I'm
feet. I don't know exactly, but the right-of-way would have sidewalk and any landscaping as well.
And are we approving the plat, the actual plat also, or just the
That's my
waiver?
understanding of Dave's motion. It was a motion to approve the plat,
With-
proposed plat as submitted on the paperwork, the final plat, Centennial Park Phase 4.
It was the preliminary.
Yeah, I'm sorry, preliminary and final plat for Centennial Park Phase 4, and as part of that motion, you're approving your waiver for the 60-foot right-of-way, or to take it down from 60 feet to 50 feet.
Thank you for the clarification.
I think, Pat, what I'm hearing you're asking is, why are we approving the right-of-way inside the plat if there's litigation pending? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, that's what I'm asking.
Okay.
But we're already approving the plat with the right-of-way, so
He's saying, though, if the right-of-way's in litigation, can we approve that plat with litigation pending on that?
Right.
Is what he's asking, I think.
I think you can approve it
Enough said to me then. Okay.
if you are so inclined.
Does that help?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, Denise, we're ready for the roll call vote, please.
Sandra Hash,
Yes?
David Drake,
yes.
Pamela Samples. Yes. Dennis Walker,
Yes.
Pat Wizalowski.
Yes.
Don Calvert.
Abstain.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. Motion carried.
Thank you. And I do just want to make a very short statement from Mr. Carmen's remarks that were directed to me. I've been on the Plan Commission for quite a few number of years. And when we annexed this many years ago, it was presented to us at that time with a 50-foot easement at the end of Centennial Drive. In planning standards, when you look at a map that's presented before you with a platted 50-foot strip, you naturally think that is for a future expansion of a roadway. And at that time, we, as a group, the whole Plan Commission, thought it was a wonderful idea because we knew the access issues for Woodgate and Springs Valley, and this was an opportunity to funnel traffic to a light. That was a very big portion of our annexation approval. It was proven in court that that 50-foot strip of land sit between two properties all by itself, no other reason in the world, was not an easement. And I respect the court's judgment of that. But I wanted to clarify, I'm not upset with Highland Park, and I'm not upset with the other group. I don't remember Mr. Emery's group. I'm not upset with anyone. I'm just saying that the facts at the time that were presented to us over a decade ago, whether that map was right, wrong, or indifferent, was presented with an easement. And I just wanted to clarify that I'm not upset with any party, but as a Plan Commissioner and with my, 20 years of being on the Plan Commission, we have learned over and over that interconnection of subdivisions reduces traffic on main arteries, and it is a good planning tool. So I'm just clarifying my point. Okay, moving on.
I think you should adopt findings to support your decision, although I think Dave kind of laid them out.
Okay.
So-
We'd like further explanation, or do we need more wordage, or just accept the findings?
I think you can make a motion to accept the plan director's report and incorporate that into your findings. I mean, I think what the report pretty much lays out what Dave said, so.
Okay. Would you like
Yeah,
to?
I read it right off there.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the planning department's findings in regards to PC 20-07 and incorporate those into our approval.
Second.
Denise, roll call, please.
Sandra Hack?
Yes.
David Drake?
Yes.
Pamela Sample?
Yes.
Dennis Walker?
Yes.
Pat Wojciechowski?
Yes.
Now, does he abstain to the final?
Yes, he didn't vote, so.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. We'll move on now to Planning Department update.
All right, we will have a meeting next month. I've already received the plans and application for Starbucks to go in at Cedar Bluff, so you will have that before you, unless something changes. And a couple other possible cases coming. Don't know. People told me things will be coming in. Haven't gotten them yet, so regardless, we'll have a meeting.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I just wanted to stop till we had quiet.
That's perfectly understandable. The only other big thing right now is our building department will be coming back to Ellettsville effective July 1st. We're getting the finishing touches on how everything's going to run and looking forward to it.
Thank you. I know it's been a lot of work. Be interesting to see how we progress.
It will be.
I'm very excited to have the building department and the inspectors here again.
We are now. We'll see how we feel in a month.
Okay, next is privilege of the floor, and this is your opportunity to speak to the Plan Commission about any item that is not on the agenda or is on the agenda. Do I have anyone from the public that would like to make any further comment? Seeing none, I would take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Meeting is adjourned at 6:47 p.m.